your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program will begin in 5 minutes. Please take your seats. The program is about to begin. Please welcome to the stage Bloomberg's Lisa Mateo.
All right. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good afternoon. Good, good, very good. Do you have your coffee, your water? Those mocktails, very good, by the way. Has everyone had one? Thank you for joining us. Now, first of all, whether you're joining us virtually, for the people around the world who are joining virtually, whether you're joining us in person right here in Toronto, thank you very much. We are so excited to have you here with us today. My name is Lisa Mateo. I'm a business correspondent for Bloomberg News, and I am your host for Intelligent Automation Transformation in a Time of Uncertainty. Now, it's no secret that there are concerns for global economic growth. The International Monetary Fund, the IMF, they recently downgraded their global growth forecast. And this has led to some changes within corporate cultures. It's leading to corporate cultures that are demanding productive growth, but also corporate cultures that are demanding cost savings. So how do you get the best of those both? Well, we conducted a poll for social media for Bloomberg, and it found that almost half of respondents said that ROI, that return on investment, was that #1 metric that management was looking for when they wanted to greenlight a project, give it the go-ahead. And fewer than half of workers, they said that their company culture embraces new technology. So they want the ROI, but yet they want the new technology, and you have this economic pressure. So now we're going to talk about how to get those both together. All right, today we're going to discuss a lot of those things. We have some great panels in store for you. We're going to discuss how organizations can reduce that economic pressure that we were just talking about by using intelligent automation to help create those efficiencies and increase that stakeholder value. We'll also touch upon how companies can build support for automation from their employees, from the people you work with, from management. How do you get everyone on board? It can be confusing. It's a lot of information to take in. How do you get everyone trained in it? These are all the discussions we're going to be having today. And yes, we are also going to be talking about that hot topic of artificial intelligence. You hear it everywhere. We're talking about it here for today. Now, before we get to any of this, there are a few housekeeping issues that I want to get to. Okay, for our virtual audience, for the people watching at home, any issues with audio or visual, if you're having that, simply refresh your browser. If you need support after that, if the refreshing the browser doesn't work, then you open that event chat box. It's in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen. Now, in case you're wondering, we partnered up with an audio-to-text platform. So everything you see is being transcribed in real time as you see it going on the screens here. Now, if you want a copy of that transcription, you can also head to the link in the session description, and you can get it there as well. And we want to hear from you for the people at home, too. You're included. You're not here, but you're still involved. So we want to hear from you. In order to ask those questions, you click the white tab on the right side of the video window. OK, so that's for the people who are at home. Now, for everyone here, we want you all to take part, too. We want you to ask your questions. How do you do that? Yes, the handy-dandy QR code. You've seen them everywhere. So that's what you do if you want to submit your questions. And they'll pop up on the screen. We'll interject them into the different conversations that we'll have here on the stage for today. Also, engage with us on social media for anyone I see taking pictures or anything today. #IntelligentAutomation. Very important. Be part of the conversation. And finally, I'd like to thank our sponsor, IBM, because this would not be possible if it was not for them, for sponsoring this event, for all the conversations that we're going to have on the stage here for today. All right, with that, we are ready to get things started, right? Are you ready to get things started? Yes, okay. Can we please welcome to the stage Deb Pimentel, General Manager Technology for IBM Canada.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to the Bloomberg team and to all of you for being here with us today for our second Intelligent Automation series here in Toronto. Now, today's topic is all about intelligent automation in a time of uncertainty. There is certainly a lot of change around the world. Whether it's economic uncertainties, whether it's supply chain uncertainties, it's rising costs. There is so much that's happening all around us, and it can get really, really overwhelming. And on top of that, now we hear about the promise of AI and how it's going to help us to scale and really address a lot of these challenges that we're having. So, we've all read the headlines. Generative AI is going to change the way that we work and the way that we live. It was about a year ago that we saw ChatGPT come out. And, at first everybody wanted to, and it was a lot of fun. It was a tool that we're all working with. But, what it really did for us in the business world, it really brought to the forefront the necessity to see how can automation and AI help us with these processes and workflows. What is the difference that it's going to make? The other thing that's really happening is that every single organization around the world is now talking about AI and how they can leverage AI in their business to make improvements. So, it doesn't matter. It's board level. It's CEOs. Everyone's asking the question. So all these discussions about the improvements of AI and automation in workflow, this is actually not a new thing for us at IBM. We've been doing this for many, many years with AI. The biggest difference really right now is the technology. The technology has really accelerated so that it can do much more for us, more than ever before. So, at IBM, for example, we have had, and this has become one of my favorite topics, over the past few months, we've gone right across Canada, and all clients want to talk about how can they use AI, generative AI, and automation to help to improve their business. Whether it's a productivity improvement, whether it's cost reduction, whether it's revenue growth, these are all things use cases that customers are working with us and talking to us about. It's top of mind everywhere. And so what we always say to our clients is, this can be really overwhelming. It starts simple, maybe start with a use case, but pick a use case that's going to bring you significant value, a return on investment, so that you can then grow that use case. If you try to do it across your entire organization, it can be daunting. So that's typically what I have been talking to various clients across the country about. So I don't have much time with you here because we've got a wonderful set of speakers that are going to be coming up and talking to you. But please make sure to reach out to us at IBM. We'd love to have an opportunity to talk to you about the different use cases, our point of view, our roadmap. We would really appreciate that opportunity. So now, what we're going to do is we're going to have people today that are going to be talking to you about how they're leveraging automation and AI strategically, and also at speed, but also thinking about things like ethics, data privacy, and governance. So that will be the key differentiator. So I'm going to now stop and bring the next panel up. Thank you again very much for your time. I really look forward to meeting many of you.
All right. I'm excited to bring to the stage right now an executive who has extensive experience overseeing operations for one of Canada's largest operations. Please welcome Julie Levesque from the National Bank of Canada. Thank you, Julie. Now, you're responsible for implementing the bank's technological strategy, so you are the perfect person to be here with us for today. What I want to do is start with automation and first understand, kind of set the table. How are you incorporating automation into the National Bank of Canada? And what was the thought process behind it?
Obviously, automation has always been part of, if you're part of a technology team, it's always been part of your DNA, I would say, and part of what you need to do. We've talked about, over the past few years, a lot about cloud transformation, digitization, but it all goes through and follows through a process of automation. So CI/CD pipeline and all of that, it simplifies the way that the technology team works. So technology has been at the forefront, I would say, of pushing the automation. I'm also accountable for the operations, so the back office at National Bank. So I have a lot of tasks and employees that do manual tasks. So automation has been a lever for us in order to accelerate and provide a much better customer service, to eliminate as much as possible all these little manual tasks that were, at the end adds up to create either quality or time constraint to our customers. So we've done a lot of thinking around that, and I would say the switch that we've done over the past 2 years is that I've put into the forefront simplification of the product offering from a customer point of view. So instead of just looking at, these are all the tasks that I need to automate, I would look at it and say, if I automate all of this, I don't create a lot of value for the customer. So let's look at our product offering, our processes, simplify that, and what's left, then I can automate. So that has been a huge, I would say, shift that we started 2 years ago. Simplification was not the word that would come out of the mouth of all my colleagues in the business unit. Today, that's all they talk about, because they see the benefit of simplifying the way that they work and how we can leverage and impact positively the customer experience, but our employee as well.
Right, and you kind of touched upon this a little bit. Can you ever over-automate?
I don't think you can over-automate, but if you do it in the sense of that's the only purpose, then you're missing the point. At the end of the day, whatever that we do in our business, we serve customer. So we need to make sure that whatever that we do creates value for the customer. So if you over-automate things and the customer doesn't see any benefit, then perhaps you need to ask yourself, why have I done this? If it doesn't create, and obviously in these days, there's a lot of pressure on our cost structure. Mm-hmm. So obviously there's an aspect of that. But at the end of the day, you need to balance both. And you need to make sure that sometimes, getting to 100% automated is not feasible.
Right.
Or doesn't make any sense from a cost point of view.
So can you give any examples, anything you've heard of where areas where maybe it wasn't the right fit for, and then a fit where it was the right fit?
So I think we started at the beginning of all this process review. We were looking at identifying, put our pink glasses on and identified what's the ideal target state for some of these processes. And we spent a lot of time doing that and understanding, the macro details of all the processes. At the end of the day, we realized that, yes, it's great to do that, but it's a North Star that we're never going to meet, because getting 100% automated, as I mentioned, is quite difficult. So instead we've used, and I'm leveraging a little bit of the AI follow-up conversations, but we've leveraged process mining type of work that we've done with AI that actually ingest all the data, let's say, for example, from our CRM, our origination system, and really identified in our processes where is the bigger bang for the buck. And we target those. So if I know, for example, in mortgage origination, in this piece of the process, this is where, let's say, for example, 30% of all our account opening are following API path. 30%. Okay, hold on a second. If it's 30%, then we're doing something wrong. So what are we doing wrong? Is it the product? Is it the process? So, and that's how we leverage, and we realize that there's a lot of value in doing that instead of just identifying tasks and automating them.
How is it changing the way you do business?
It's changing tremendously the way that we do business. So obviously, it changes the way we offer product to our customer. It changes as well the life of our employees that have been doing the same thing for a long time. So it's easier to fill in a form, a paper form, ship it to the operation, and someone will keep punching it in. Now we're not doing that. We're saying you need to teach the customer how to do it online themselves. So then everything else is automated in the background. So from a customer point of view, you get your response right away. You get whatever product that you ordered, you get it right, much easier than filling in a form with the delays of it. But it's a lot of training for our front office to say, oh, we're looking at things a lot differently. The first reaction of people in saying, well, let's do a digital form instead of a paper form. That's not simplifying and automating completely. That's doing one step. That's not pulling it to the end and making sure that we value and we bring a lot of value to the customer.
Now, there's a lot of data coming in.
Yes.
Yes, so how do you deal with, I know there's concerns about privacy. How do you deal with all the data?
So obviously, I work in financial services, so it's a very strictly and highly regulated environment. So we have tight controls on where the data resides, and it's within our environment. So we don't, so we talk about ChatGPT and all these new technology that has been made available. There's a lot of questions around privacy, IP as well. So whatever that we do, it's within our environment, cloud or data center, and we make sure that we have tight controls over that. And consent of the customer to share information or not is tightly managed, because trust is at the soul and heart of what we do. Banking, we trust our banks, so we want to make sure that, and we make sure that it's tight.
Right. I want to get to AI too. We're going to dig into that too. Technology always evolving. How do you create that culture within your corporation for people to understand where the change is going? Because sometimes change is difficult, and it's hard to understand. How do you get people to get on board with it?
We have a very entrepreneurial spirit at National Bank, so I would say it's probably more the opposite.
Okay.
I have to explain in a little bit to what was said in introduction. Like everybody gets, oh, this is great, this is fun, let's deploy this right away. How come it's not, Julie, go to the board and say what we're going to be doing with this? So, so I think that, which is great, but I think it's more containing that. I think also from a technology point of view, it's part of our profession. We need to be always looking forward. So we need to bring to the table these new technology, but always in the mindset of, what business value does it bring, so that it doesn't become a new widget, a new something, a shiny object that technology has built that no one uses. So really always have that correlation between business need and technology. I think it's great. And I think what really makes it perhaps more successful that I tell my team on the technology side, and I've said this many times in previous engagement, you need to be bilingual. You need to speak business, you need to speak technology. You have to do both. If you only speak technology, you're never going to get the buy-in and understand the value that the automation, the AI can bring to the table.
Excellent. I want to get to an audience question, too, that we have coming in. As we navigate waves of disruption, how can large organizations accelerate innovation while protecting the core business?
So there's many ways. I think there's many companies that try different avenue. I am not a firm believer of having one single team that does lab and innovation, where they're the innovators while everybody else needs to go through and submit an idea. And I find that it kills innovation. So I prefer to have innovation within the different teams, but we provide framework and guidelines that needs to be followed. So for example, when ChatGPT was made public in November last year, we did not close it down right away. We've said, here's the guidelines in order to use it. But we monitor you and we check you. So if you try to do something that you should not be doing because we told you not to do that, we'll catch you. So
You've been warned.
And you've been warned, and they've been caught. So I think that's how we do it. Again, I think it's our profession as technology to always look forward to see what are the new things coming in. I also think it needs to be balanced because I was at a conference last week in Silicon Valley, and someone said, you know, the 10,000 proof of concept is a killer because if you try many things, you lose track of what you need to do. So you need to concentrate on a few things. Fail fast again. So if you try it doesn't work, then try something else, which is good, but always, you know, within a framework and guidelines. I think that's the key. And you federate innovation. If you try to concentrate it, then it creates a lot more friction, I find.
Now, what's one of the biggest challenges you have within your company and how do you feel like automation or AI can help alleviate that challenge?
So it's a big challenge, but it's a great opportunity at the same time. So on the obviously automation, we've done a lot of work on that. On the AI side, I'll say we've been doing traditional AI, so credit modeling, chatbots. We've been doing that for quite some time. I find the new generative AI brings something completely new to the table. It's still very focused on text and unstructured data, but it will evolve to be something else. But it's a huge lever, I would say, for efficiency. So if you don't specifically are attached to a product, but the concept of co-piloting, which is not necessarily just Copilot from GitHub from a software development point of view or even Office 365, but having that helps you along the way to create text, to create documents, that is huge and helpful from a customer service point of view, call center modernization, which we're right into. Same thing with knowledge management, finding information. These are all capabilities that generative AI can definitely, when it's structured and organized the way that you do and protect your data, obviously, is a huge leverage. So we've done a lot of proof of concept. We've deployed some of these capabilities. We monitor the efficiency that it brings. And then we make sure that we monitor that continuously. And we've seen it's a huge uplift. It doesn't change the work. So a lot of, obviously, the first reaction from employees is, oh my God, like is my job jeopardized?
I was just going to get to that. Thank you.
But
yes.
So from a software development point of view, what I said to them is, if you don't use it, yes, your job will be jeopardized. You need to use it because that's, the people that don't use it will get behind very quickly in a year or two from now, not having tested those new skill sets that are required, prompt engineering and all of that. You need to use it. And then in 6 months, you're going to be a lot better. In a year, you're going to be a lot better. So you need to right away start using it.
So is it finding new roles?
I think it's an evolution of the current role. Mm-hmm. I think that obviously, even if I think about from a more of a business point of view, on the operations side, or even if writing documents, business analysts and all of that, their job is going to change. They're still going to do the same output, but they might use different tools now in order to create a story, create the business requirement. There's a lot of tools now that help you do that and automate that. You still need someone to validate it. So their job is going to be a little different, but still required. I do not believe at this point that we could say, AI is going to cut down completely and reduce by, X number of resources completely at the end. I think it's more of a shift in skill set.
Now, last time we talked, you were on the board of the Center for Research for AI, is that correct?
Yes, in Montreal, yes.
Perfect. So what can you tell us about just Canada's overall AI ecosystem? What, as far as regulations, what are your concerns?
So obviously Canada is well recognized worldly on AI. We have great mindsets that are originated from from Montreal, but also from Toronto. And we have created a community, I think, where I was in San Francisco last week, they were referencing the AI community here in Canada. So that's something that we need to be really proud of. So we've done a lot of it. I think from a regulation point of view, we're probably still a little behind. And again, we need to find our ways and perhaps accelerate some of those. So again, when I was last week in Silicon Valley, there was the Attorney General of the United States on stage talking about the issues and the challenges that they have in the US, which are things that we see that we haven't seen yet in Canada. So lawsuits against, obviously, OpenAI, Microsoft, and all of those things. We haven't seen those. We look at, from a remote from Canada, we look at those and we say, okay, it might happen to us as well. So I think we need to get into that, setting up having those conversations with the different levels of government and entities and making sure that we accelerate, because it's not coming, it's here.
It's here, correct. I want to get to another question from the audience. What role, if any, can large language models or AI improve communication between or migration away from legacy IT?
That's an excellent question. So I think there's lots that needs to be done. And you know, over the past 2 years, I've been asked, what's your strategy to modernize your core banking? And the strategy was mostly around how do I move my mainframe ecosystem into either a new core banking or something completely different. And I think what I've observed in the past few months, which is not still, I would say, industrialized and ready to be production ready, I think there's a lot of new capabilities that to me are probably the angle of my strategy that I'm going to use moving forward. So instead of, it's not translating COBOL into something new, it's rewriting COBOL. So ingesting millions and millions of lines of code and and creating something completely new in a more modernized language, I think is something that it will be a game changer.
And that was my kind of follow-up and final question is for you. Where do you see the future of it going, let's say 10 years from now, 20? I mean, everything's happening so fast as it is.
Actually, it's a very good question, and I don't know. I really don't. I think there's so many things that we haven't yet grasped. I think there's lots of really bright individuals that are looking at what's ahead, what's coming ahead. As I mentioned, we talk about generative AI mostly on text, but there's visual and images and voice and all of that is coming. Imagine the power of merging all of these together. Right. I think this is exciting time.
And what about those coming up? Colleges, are they incorporating this into their curriculum? Do you see that from the next generation coming in?
So that's a challenge, I would say, because even today, students that are coming out of programs from universities, let's say from a cloud point of view, are very limited. It's very generic. They're still very skilled, a lot of skills, but it's generic. So it's the industry that needs to train them specifically on these types of technologies. So I find that AI is going to be something a little similar. That being said, the framework, how you conceptually build it, that definitely the university and colleges have already started to do some of the shifts. But there's lots of work that needs to be done.
Julie, thank you so much. Everyone, one more time for Julie Levesque from the National Bank of Canada. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, I'd now like to turn the stage over to my colleague, Chandra, the executive producer of Bloomberg Television. She's going to be having a conversation with a few folks. Debbie Gamble from Interact. We have Andreas, Liris from Maple Leaf Food, and Scott Taylor from Shared Services Canada. Please come up.
Thank you, Lisa, and welcome everyone. Thank you for your time here today. Today we're going to be talking about, our panel is about putting artificial intelligence to work. So, it's been moving really fast. There's been a lot of hype, a lot of debate around it. But the one thing that is not debatable, or is pretty, everyone's pretty sure about, is the successful implementation of AI for long-term success. Today I would love to talk about a few different things. We've got very limited time, and I'm going to try and squeeze it all in together in 25 minutes. But we would love to talk about how AI is transforming your industries, and we'll try and separate some fact from fiction. The three of you come from very different industries. Debbie, you're from Interact, financial services, fintech. Andrea, you're from the meatpacking industry, Maple Leaf Foods, and food, of course. And Scott, you're from the federal government. So three very, very different industries. So this is going to be really interesting. I want to start with you, Debbie, and if you could give me an example of how AI and what type of AI has transformed your Interact specifically, and what department? So what specific type of AI and what department have you seen it lately?
Sure. Thanks, and thanks for the invite today. I think as Deb mentioned from IBM and Julie from National Bank, certainly in the financial services industry and technology as a whole, AI from a machine learning predictive analytics perspective has been around for a while. And in the financial services industry, it's core to how we manage risk. For Interact in particular, we've been using, on behalf of our shareholders and our participants, we have an extensive AI program around machine learning with a particular focus on fraud. Right, so our business is payments and secure transactions, and fraud is a particular arena that we pay a lot of attention to. So we do that through some predictive analytics, some machine learning capabilities, and as I say, we've been doing that for a while, and when we think about that from a productivity perspective, it's not, I'd say it's not just actually a productivity perspective. At the end of the day, AI is really a set of algorithms to manage some mathematical patterns. But that's the basis of it. And we use machine learning to try and solve some pretty complex problems. So we've been doing that for a while. I'm sure we're going to get into, large language models and generative AI. But it is core to who we are.
Okay. Andrea, what about you?
Yeah, so we're in manufacturing, quite different, obviously, than Interact. We have a very broad aperture in terms of how we look at automation. Robotics, cobotics, machine learning, vision systems, voice. So we have a lot of different applications. I'd say for sure in data, we've seen lots of success in terms of machine learning, applying machine learning and looking at predictive signals. Obviously, on our plant floor manufacturing, the application of robotics is pretty obvious that it's either supplementing or changing the job on the plant floor. And we've seen quite a bit of, I'd say quite a bit of value in food safety and just in general in terms of consistency of product, specifically using, concepts like digital twin as well as vision. So again, a very, very broad spectrum in terms of, obviously the tools that are available to us just because of the operating environment that we are in.
Can you elaborate a little bit more about the food safety aspect?
So again, vision. It takes a lot of data, but ultimately determining whether something is, just to use some very basic terms, whether something is good or bad. Using vision to distinguish that. Not necessarily even the human eye, but at speed, using vision technology is something that we've seen value with.
That's fascinating. Yeah. Scott, you work with almost 100 different federal agencies, so it's a little bit different for you to speak on this topic on behalf of all these agencies. But from your perspective, give me some examples of what type of AI technology has really transformed the organizations that you work with within the federal government.
Right, and you're absolutely right. So I come from one department. Obviously, the federal government is huge. We do many different things. From inside of government, I would say, from the public servant's view of that internal mechanism of government, which can be very different from a citizen-facing service, because then concepts like trust of citizenry and that type of thing kicks in, where things maybe go a little slower. But we're seeing a lot of automation. It won't shock anybody if I say government sometimes has some slow and complicated processes. And they're ripe for automation, and they're ripe for intelligent automation. Everything from the way we hire people, the way we pay our bills, the way we manage and access to information requests, which is a foundational element of any government. So automation would be, I think, probably at the forefront in the quantity. Obviously, large amounts of data, large amounts of citizen data that's ripe for that. Someone used the term traditional AI with machine learning and predictive analytics. And in the last 12 months, generative AI has created quite a buzz in government with regards to how it can be used to interact with citizens. And how we can control the output based on how citizens are engaging government. And I would say every government department is looking at all three of those areas today.
And in terms of generative AI, how is the government navigating that? Because
carefully.
that's good.
Yeah. I think the line over at which the government gets really concerned about AI is when we allow an algorithm or a machine to make a decision. And I don't think that happens right now. I think the human is still in the loop for decisions of finance, decisions of citizen-facing services. All of our policy documents and guidance talks about automated decision-making. And we're very careful about how an algorithm or an AI capability can make a decision on who gets a grant, who is granted citizenship, who gets a particular financial benefit, right? That is very important to us.
That's really interesting. Debbie, I want to bring you back into the conversation. And if you could give me, or give us rather, an example or a recent example of a successful implementation of AI within Interact, and what were the takeaways? What have you learned from that?
Again, I'll go back to kind of core for us is managing risk. Ensuring that the payments infrastructure is resilient, safety and soundness of it. So this is core. Predictive analytics is part and parcel of that. And so we manage, on behalf of the financial institutions across Canada, we manage the fraud capabilities. And as a result of some of the tools that we use and the work that we do with our participants, with the financial institutions, I can say that our predictive analytics around fraud is some of the best in the world. So we've been able to maintain, and this is public data, so we've been able to maintain those very low levels of fraud as a result of using some of that technology and the capabilities. But this is an ongoing process, right? It's never kind of done. And those new models, whether it's kind of natural language, large language models, and also the machine learning, predictive analytics, this is just going to enhance the way we continue to provide those services.
Okay. Andrea, in the manufacturing, on the manufacturing side, what are your biggest takeaways in the way you've implemented?
Yeah, it's a very non-traditional. It's a very non-traditional project. Is the best way I can describe it. I come from a world where traditional waterfall, doing system integration testing, user acceptance testing, performance testing. So there was a methodology, and when you get into technologies like vision and voice, it really becomes very non-traditional. So the environment in itself plays a factor. I operate in an environment where we have sanitation practices, so the camera will get misty. So I think the lesson here is really you need to really kind of roll with the punches, and really be. I think there needs to be just a general acceptance that things are not linear. Is one thing I would say. The other thing is patience, meaning voice would be a really good example. I think probably vision as well, where we looked at technology 2-3 years ago and it wasn't there. But I think it's just about being persistent. You don't want to necessarily chase the shiny thing, but you do need to be persistent because things are changing. We talked about Gen AI. We feel, and there was a comment made actually at the outset, that ultimately it's going to be really exciting when all these technologies kind of come together. And we're seeing on the surface a lot of promise of layering Gen AI on ML and other things. So very kind of long-winded answer, but it really does come down to patience and just your ability to really kind of persevere and, you know, and just kind of adjust the way you do things. It would be my biggest takeaway.
Fair enough. Scott, you come from a more traditional side, industry, I would say, as opposed to Andrea, who's is not traditional. Do you agree with what he says? Does that apply to you as well?
Absolutely, it applies. I mean, it's at the end of the day, sometimes the reaction to some of this is still a people reaction, and whether they work in government or whether they work in industry and whatever job they do. And I think there's a bit of a trepidation for folks who see the hype, hear the hype around some of the AI and automation and ask themselves, is this going to affect my job? And you know, when I said earlier, automation and intelligent automation is probably one of the low-hanging fruit for government. Even that, and I'll give you an example, many departments, including my own, have automated the way we respond. Just the example I gave earlier, the access to information. So from a citizen's point of view, they can ask the government anything, and they can ask for certain pieces of data. That generates a flurry of activity inside government. Sometimes hundreds of people search thousands of sources to find all the information because it's our obligation to answer the question in its entirety. That's an easily automated process. And it's a process that, I'm not giving away state secrets here. Most government employees don't like doing because it takes time away. I've got to go down tools and look for something. That brought a conversation to the forefront with regards to, well, if I'm not doing that, if that's 10% of my day or 20% of my day, am I going to be replaced? Is that ultimately going to replace me? And I think, again, government is treading very carefully there. We look to industry partners who are often ahead of us in the adoption of some of these technologies. And we need to have that dialogue because often, you know, folks like my fellow panelists here will face those challenges before we do.
That's very interesting. Okay, I want to move on to the part of the panel where we said we'd talk about separating AI fact from fiction. We'll try and do it sort of like a rapid fire, but not really like a rapid fire, where I'd like to say a sentence, and if the three of you could tell me whether it's fact or fiction and apply it to your industry. The first one is kind of obvious. We've all kind of, you know, heard about it, thought about it, talked about it. AI will replace human jobs completely, fact or fiction? And I have a feeling I know what you're going to say. Debbie, do you want to go first?
Fiction, for now. I think in the long haul we don't know. But I'd say fiction for now. What it is doing is, we heard earlier about productivity and about increased value, but I think there's also an angle of creativity that we're really starting to appreciate, especially when you layer on the various different capabilities. So I think the roles will change, but I don't think for now that it's actually about eliminating jobs.
Okay, Andrea?
I think it's fiction forever, to be honest, like in my view, but what do I know? I think for sure it will complement roles. You know, it'll be a co-pilot to roles, if you want to use the terminology. It will potentially eliminate some roles, but change the job likely, is more my thought. But I can't imagine, especially in terms of what I do, you know, in terms of meat processing, it's difficult as we think through lots to the jobs, especially on the plant floor. It's hard to imagine that it could totally change everything with robots.
Okay, fair enough. Scott, we've got one saying fact for now, one saying fiction forever. Well, sorry, one saying fiction for now, one saying fiction forever. What's your take?
Yeah, certainly fiction.
For now or forever?
I'm going to be in the for now camp. Okay. You said, will jobs be replaced? Job functions will certainly be replaced. Will humans be replaced? Well, I think those tasks or the people who do them that are unable to adapt or refuse to adapt, I think will change drastically, right? Certainly we're seeing functions that people do today that will be automated, that will change. AI is doing things that nobody is doing today because we're unable to do that predictive calculation fast enough. Like any revolutionary advancement in technology, I think the industry will adapt and that different roles and jobs will appear.
Okay. AI is diverse and specialized, fact or fiction? Who wants to go first? Scott?
Could you repeat that question?
AI is diverse and specialized. Is that fact or fiction?
I think a fact. I think someone described to me recently where we are with artificial intelligence today is where we were with the internet in 1985. And if you think about how far we've come with that technology in the last, 35 years or so, where will we be with AI in the 30 years? I think we're seeing very creative uses and applications of this that even 2 months ago we didn't, or at least I didn't dream of, and some pretty fantastical capabilities are coming out of this technology. So very diverse, for sure.
Okay, Andreas?
So I would agree. I think specialized in the sense that certain types of AI currently where we are on the spectrum are just very, very specific to use cases. But diverse in the sense that it really, I love the internet thing. It's large language models. We weren't talking about these things. I wasn't, at least a year ago. And these things are taking on almost like a human-like quality. So diverse in that sense.
Okay. What about you, Debbie?
I think it's both. I think it's diverse because we're going to get some best practices that apply to lots of different industries. I'm pretty sure, even though our industries are very different, we probably use certain tools for the same things. And I think it's going to get very specialized when we start to think about how we can not just solve some of the current complex problems, but maybe even think about, I mentioned creativity earlier, certainly in my world, we're looking at how can we use some of these capabilities to create better software. So not just do it faster, but how can you create better software? How can you create better interactions with the end user? How can you create those interactions that are unique, relevant, and rich? And I think you'll start to see, especially in the healthcare industry, it's going to be very specialized.
Okay, I'm just going to jump in quickly for an audience question, and then we can go back to the fact or fiction game that we're playing here. With this careful approach that the government takes in AI, is the government at risk of getting behind the private industry that it regulates?
I guess that was mine.
Yes.
No, I don't think so. Because I think there's a difference between the adoption of some of these technologies and delivering them in a citizen-facing environment where we need to be, and we need to maintain the citizen trust, and we need to be very, perhaps even, not that industry is not concerned about privacy and ethics, but we have a responsibility to our citizenry to be very, very careful there. But at the same time, we can still keep that level of knowledge and that level of expertise up, and that's a partnership with industry. Yeah. Right? We don't sit behind closed doors and regulate industry. I think there's always a dialogue. So I think we can do both.
Okay. All right, going back to separating fact and fiction. AI possesses human-like intelligence. Fact or fiction? Andrea, do you want to take this one first?
Definitely fiction. I haven't seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, the closest thing, robots maybe, but the closest thing we're seeing these days obviously are the large language models. And I mean, I think for the most part, most of us know it's kind of like a elaborate autocomplete. So maybe in the future, but definitely fiction right now.
That was going to be my question. Do you think in the future?
Yeah, I think it's possible. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Debbie, what do you think? Do you agree?
Yes, I think it's fiction right now. there are lots of human qualities that AI can replicate, but I think consciousness and, AI, as we know, is based on data, and the quality of that data, the input, and the biases that go along with that are going to create the output. So sieving through that, I mean, subjectivity is not an arena for AI right now. Could it be? Possibly.
Scott, do you see that changing?
I'm a firm believer that I don't think it ever will. I think generative AI is a giant predicting machine. The way it works is it uses some pretty impressive mathematics to predict in a written sentence back to you word for word for word. And I'm not convinced that human intelligence or human consciousness can be imparted into that. But the caveat is, anybody who thinks they can predict the future is probably doomed to humiliation.
Okay. AI possesses, and I know we've touched upon this a little bit, an immediate existential threat. When you think of ChatGPT and just the unknowns there, or deep fakes and things like that, especially in your industry, for example, deep fakes is terrifying.
Absolutely.
Do you see that, as an immediate and existential threat?
I think we should ask you that question in the news industry, actually. It's a reality.
Well played.
Right?
Well played, Debbie.
It's a reality for all of us. This week alone, right, with what's going on around the world. So I think the notion of, you're touching on lots of stuff there, right? Whether it's authenticity and verifiability of something, I think is going to be super important, especially as all of our industries are based on trust, right? Whether it be news, food, safety, government, financial services. So I think that's going to be that's a huge challenge for all of us. It's definitely one. I mean, it's also tied into the audience question around the role of the government, right? So this is going to be tied into regulation. It's going to be tied into policies, and I completely agree with Scott. This has got to be a collaboration across the public and private sector.
Okay. We've got 2 minutes left. Andrea, do you want to?
Yeah, I tend to agree. Just to be additive here, I definitely am a little on the glass half full on this too. There definitely is a threat factor in my mind. I think of it just in many different aspects. We do need a magic decoder ring somehow to know whether something is real or not. Yeah. And I know there are technologies that can do that. I have young kids. I feel the kids are not working as hard. Sometimes one of my kids is watching now, so I said it specifically for them. Just because some of these co-pilots are making some of their jobs, some of their work, or some of their schoolwork easier. So we need to be very thoughtful on how we regulate this, and I do want that magic decoder ring. Yeah.
Okay, Scott, last word for you.
I completely agree with my fellow panelists. I think we need to be very careful. I think there's an erosion of trust that we've already seen happen. You doubt the video you watch on TV, or you doubt the audio you hear. AI today can not only just create something fake, it could make it look really human-like, and I think we need to guard against that. And back to your diversity of this technology question, there are lots of people who want to use it in nefarious ways that aren't ethical and beneficial. So we need to keep our guard up, and we need to be careful.
Okay. We do have 30 seconds before the panel ends, but I'm going to try and very quickly squeeze in another audience question. Any concerns or examples of bias or unintended consequences when implementing AI or automation in your businesses? Andrea?
I would say yes. That's why I think really looking at the outputs with individuals in the business that really understand the data is really, really important. Yeah. We've definitely seen, almost every data product has an output like this. So the answer is yes, overwhelmingly yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Debbie, you're nodding.
Overwhelmingly yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
Scott?
Absolutely. Concerns for sure.
you know what? We've got 7 seconds left. I wrapped up. I'm very proud of myself. I was
Good job.
Right? I think I did justice of giving everyone equal amount of time, airtime, but thank you very much. Debbie Gamble, Andrea Liris, and Scott Taylor, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for your time.
I'd like to welcome to the stage IBM's Ryan McAleer for a conversation with Caren Morrison from Royal Bank of Canada.
Okay, well, thank you all for the opportunity to be here with you this afternoon. And Caren, a huge thank you to you. I know, every time that we get a chance to talk, I learn a little bit more and a little bit of something new. So I'm super excited to be here with you today. I know in your role, at RBC, with your responsibility over IT operations and site reliability engineering, that your focus is on IT automation, right? So kind of taking this umbrella of automation, intelligent automation, and applying it to the IT domain specifically. Can you share with us just a little bit about how the bank is thinking about IT automation?
I can, and as I was listening to some of the people speaking before, I thought they've covered so much material on how we've implemented this, that what are we going to talk about? So I'll give you some specific examples of how we've implemented it at the Royal Bank of Canada and how we plan to build those capabilities into the future roadmap. So I think the most fundamental shift we've made to our culture in an infrastructure and technology world is the deployment of site reliability engineering. And so site reliability engineering is just simply the capabilities that you get with software engineering and automation and building those into our day-to-day practice. So taking teams that some already had automation built in, some didn't, some had higher levels of manual tasks, and looking at how you can build automation practices into it and how you can partner with different teams and different pillars of technology all the way across the stack from applications, security, infrastructure, bring them together. I mean, it's 2023 and we're still talking about automation. And I know AI ops brings a lot of new cool capabilities, but Ryan, we've talked before about why are we still talking about automation? And I think the big shift that we need to look at, and that's where we're depending on the capabilities we get with SRE, is how we automate things differently and how we go from automating in our own independent silos to building out that horizontally aligned set of capabilities. In order to automate, you've got to have the base and the foundation in good shape. Then you automate, and then you look at the potential ahead of us with AI ops and Gen AI and some of those capabilities. And I think that's where it's exciting to build and partner with IBM, as we're here talking about today, build in that future model and find some more efficiencies and opportunities in our tech stack.
That's great, that's great. Maybe you could share a little bit more about specific use cases that you're thinking about as you embed the SRE teams, as you do some of the things that you just described. Where are you vectoring them in terms of maybe low-hanging fruit or those initial use cases? How are you thinking about that?
So there's a couple of things I'll answer with there. It's been touched a number of times here, but we talk about the impact to our workforce management or our teams with the rollout of automation and AI ops capabilities. And when we look at what use cases we want to trigger, the one reason why that hasn't scared us at RBC is we actually work very closely with the frontline operations teams and understand from them what are the best use cases we can build and how can we make your lives easier. So when you look at the benefits and the ROI you can get on some of these new tech tools, it's driving efficiencies. Sorry, is your mic good?
I guess my mic wasn't working. All right.
It's driving efficiencies through process and tech, which means, how do we save some money? And sometimes those are actual savings we give back, and sometimes we reinvest. But it's also around how can we change the lives of our employees working in the operational space. And so when you look at what use cases we can trigger, we go and talk to the staff that are doing a lot of the manual tasks and ask them for ideas. What we found there is that it gives us first of all, a very accurate view of where the opportunity lays. It gives us automatic buy-in of the teams because they're happy and thrilled to be getting rid of some of those manual tasks. And then, same as we've done with rollout of cloud or other tech, we look at what upskilling opportunities that there are for our staff to make sure it's not something that's scary or that they want to shy away from, but something that they embrace and jump into. So I think some of the benefits we've seen are around really technical day-to-day things, like looking at patch management, certificate expiry, looking at some of the calls that are coming in for support and service, and leveraging a lot of this tech that we're talking about in those spaces, and then taking that and then reinvesting some of the savings to help further and broaden our scope.
Perfect, perfect. Oh yeah, I can hear myself better now too.
I know, I felt loud before.
So that's great insight and clearly some value there. Maybe we could shift to talking about skills. I know you talked about some of the SREs, but as a partner with IBM, are there some skills that you feel like IBM's brought to the table that have been differentiated and really important to the success that you've had so far?
So skills are interesting. So we've talked about how you get a return on investment. We've talked about keeping an engaged and diverse workforce, and we know that leveraging automation capabilities is core to that. But the skills part's interesting. So what we found, and this is one of the journeys that we found on site reliability engineering, is you can go and hire people that have the development and software engineering capabilities, but finding folks that have that background and skill set and understand mainframes and COBOL programming and some of the hardcore infrastructure worlds was like kind of speaking two different languages. There are some that know both, but not a lot. And so what we did when we started out on SRE about a year and a half ago is partnered with IBM and leveraged some of the client engineering services. It used to be called the IBM Garage Work, but we worked with client engineering to help bring together our two different squads of teams, the developers, the software engineers, and the infrastructure operations leads and teams. We brought them together and through a number of different sessions built out one consolidated roadmap or book of work that we could work on. And what we found through doing that is that you were kind of cross-pollinating the skill sets. Like you're never really going to take a developer and want them to know COBOL, and COBOL programmers aren't always going to want to be able to automate, but at least getting them speak the same language so that we were marching on one journey together so that we could get the end result, which was really automating and identifying different gaps and efficiencies in some of our manual day-to-day operations. Which also, I talked about the investment piece, the big thing in the role I have too, and a big focus in our site reliability engineering journey is about stability of our production systems. So it's save money, make people happy at work, make work-life balance better, but also keep our systems up and running as efficient and proactive as we possibly can.
That's great. That's great. And I love that you mentioned our garage services kind of offering. That's big in the IBM culture around sort of co-creating and developing these ideas and really bringing them to fruition through MVPs and other ways. So maybe that's a good segue into some of the technologies. I know that you have had to evaluate a lot of things in the market. Are there some things about the technologies that you've embraced from IBM so far that you found differentiated and maybe the reason for going in that direction with us so far?
And I think RBC is a strong partnership with IBM, and a big reason for that is because of the ability we have to work with IBM and co-create. We've done that for a number of years. So we'll look at what products and capabilities you have, we'll look at what problems we have, and through the co-creation process, we've been able to build some different products and service capabilities that we've been able to use, and I know that IBM's gone on to use with other organizations as well. So the co-creation's been big. I'd have to bring up the Watson X that we're looking at right now too. A lot of industries are looking at how they can leverage capabilities like that. I know IBM's got a good sound offering in that place, and we're partnering with you to understand where there are opportunities to leverage tech like that inside of RBC.
Perfect, perfect. Well, now maybe we tackle a little bit more of a nebulous topic or challenging one from my vantage point at least, and that's sort of the cultural aspect of embracing some of the technologies that you've talked about, whether it's the cultural change of putting some SRE teams in places they haven't been before, adopting these technologies in a new way, and even, going further with some of the discussion that we heard from the panel before us around some of the fears associated with, going down this path of automating things, using AI that's, a little bit scary from time to time, or the fear of maybe, replacing me as an employee. How have you, specifically dealt with some of those cultural challenges at the bank?
I feel like this is a corny answer, but it's the best way I can describe it. When we talk about culture in technology and at RBC, you guys are all familiar with your teams, right? Like we all work on teams, but a team is essentially a reporting structure. It's just kind of a newer name for a group of people working together. But I think how we've really addressed that is not just looking at the teams that we have in place and trying to align teams, but building out a community of expert practitioners that span across multiple teams. And what we found is when you build these communities, it's almost like a build it and they will come mentality. We bring in different technologists from internally, externally. We leverage partners such as IBM, and we build these communities that people love to follow. And we use them as an opportunity to get a lot of great innovative tech ideas out there, and we also use them as a really good incubator or kind of lab environment to come up with really innovative ideas to help look at what the next opportunity is or the next problem that we can go solve. And again, it's almost that like grassroots up way of tracking and identifying opportunities instead of the old school like management's come down saying, here's what we're gonna go do. And it's resonated well, and it's helped us because we have the buy-in of the teams and the people we work with. I think it's been a big key differentiator for us.
Awesome.
And how we tackled it.
Awesome. Well, I know we're about out of time, so I just wanted to thank you again. You have such thoughtful insights always, so we really appreciate you sharing them with us. Thanks.
Thank you for having us.
All right, now we're going to talk about how technology executives are coming up with these projects to deliver transformative change. So I'd like to bring up my guests right now, Marcus Bertignoli, Choice Properties REIT, Rohit Chandra from Metrolinx, and Mamta Sethi from Manulife. Come on down. Thank you for joining me. So there's a lot of great things I want to talk about. I love this great perspective that we have from different industries. You know, we have real estate, transportation, insurance across the spectrum here. I want to start by getting everyone familiar with what you're doing as far as automation and how are you using it within your company for your specific industry as well. So Marcus, I'll start with you as far as real estate. How are you incorporating automation? What do you find the best part of it as it's helping your company?
Yeah, so for Choice Properties REIT, the biggest opportunity we're finding is to help us improve the efficiency of our backroom operations. And you know, that really for us was the low-hanging fruit, easily identifiable opportunities, and you know, there's lots of work for us there. And we bring the most value to the business. Some of the previous speakers spoke about, you know, making life better for the staff, and we found that this really was the best opportunity for us to bring a big impact, and also to start to show the organization the potential of the technology in a very real way.
Perfect. Rohit, for transportation, let's say, for where you are, where do you find it the most useful in your company?
So it's very similar, I think, to what Marcus said. I think, you know, for us, we're new in the journey, in the automation journey, on the innovation journey, and like looking at the low-hanging fruit, proving the value out is where it is. People and time are the most important things. What we have, we don't have infinite time. So how do you help create more opportunity to make people doing the work that they need to be doing more valuable for them? So it's balancing that out.
All right, and Mamta, for you, for insurance?
So within, and for those who know Manulife, it's insurance, benefits, as well as asset management, and worldwide we have different products and things. So globally, what we've been doing is obviously very similar back office process automation, but where we've seen the most value is within areas such as finance and actuarial, where there was traditionally a lot of manual processing and a lot of Excel spreadsheets. And so where we've invested is putting in a lot of time with RPA and working with our teams to automate those processes. And we've seen, because we are global, we operate in 3 different, I guess, regions, but in Asia it's 10 markets, so it's a lot of different things altogether. There we've actually seen the most amount of automation that's brought value is taking kind of a consistent approach to how we automate some of the standard processes we did manually, and especially in those kind of two brackets. Yeah.
Now, how do you decide what's the best process to use? Rohit, I know we were talking, and you have an extensive way of going through this and different charts and everything. How do you explain this? What's the best way to go?
The way we would, it's hard, right? Because you can create value and you can talk about the value, and it can be very biased in terms of the sponsors, because automation is not a team, it's across the organization. So how do you create an unbiased approach and a framework really to be able to prioritize the work that you need to do? So creating a set of, we've kind of created a gain versus impact 4-quadrant framework where we kind of map things out. It's unbiased, it's a formula that we put things in, and an outcome is created. And that really creates the priority and gives an unbiased approach to how the sponsors need to look at the organization, the prioritization of the organization across what it is that we're doing. So having that qualitative versus quantitative approach is something that we try to use that as a gauge. But again, it's not perfect. It will iterate as everything that we do. However, it is something that gives us at least a start to focus on what we believe are the most important things. And there's a lot of measurements, right? It's not just qualitative. When I say qualitative versus quantitative, very high level, but there's a lot of detail underneath that, and happy to share that with everybody as we go through this. But certainly that's an opportunity for us to start to create the conversation around what is the most important priorities.
Well, yeah, so expand on that. Give us an example of something that
there could be things around customer satisfaction. There could be things around customer, CSAT is a great example for something that we measure in the transportation organization. How satisfied are our customers? So what are some opportunities that are going to create an opportunity for us to increase CSAT? Revenue is an important piece. So there's a lot of different factors, and we want to use that in an unbiased way to be able to create a list of priorities, in which then we will share with each of the sponsors at a more senior steering committee to identify these are the opportunities. And it creates the conversation. It's not going to be perfect, but it allows us to have that conversation at a starting point. Because if you don't have, it's very hard to go in and talk about what's important if you don't have a starting point. So start there.
Start there. Marcus, how do you decide where you find the most value for it? The pros and cons, is it the same kind of?
Well, I think I agree with Rohit. I think it's important that you have some sort of a framework to prioritize the opportunities. Again, one of the earlier panelists made the comment about bringing value to the business, and you have to work on initiatives that bring value to the business. But I think the other way, as an IT department, you bring value to the business is helping the business figure out where they get the most value, because what we found in our experiences, they don't always know. And sometimes the ideas that they come forward with actually don't add a lot of value. And so we worked very hard to create a partnership with the business and to build up trust and to create that dialogue. So when they come forward with areas where they see pain points or where they think there's potential, we do a lot of questioning, we do a lot of discussion with them, and really try and get at the root source of the problem. If we've made mistakes in our journey, one of them has been solving problems for the business and then finding out after the fact you're solving something very superficial, and you didn't really, there was actually a core issue you had to deal with, and now you can't get the business interested because you took away the daily pain, but organizationally you still have a core issue in your infrastructure that you got to fix. And so now how do you get the momentum to do that? So I think a framework is key, and we have one as well. And all you have to do, like, the framework doesn't have to be precise. It just has to let you sort out the bad, poor, low value proposals from the ones that had high value.
It's a directional priority.
It's a direction, exactly,
Yes.
exactly.
Yeah.
Excellent. And since you brought up kind of that challenge, Mom, I'm going to bring you kind of a two-parter. Talk about how you find those projects that have the most value, but also something that may have been a challenge that you've faced and that you've overcome, and tell us how you went through those steps.
Sure. So for us, it's at the end of the day, it's always the business comes to us with a problem they want to solve, and it's always this in 99.9% of the time it involves some sort of technological automation component. So we know that it's going to be something we have to solve for them. We do an assessment of what that looks like. The way that we determine if it's something that we even go into is quantifying the value. So everything that, if we're looking to, and I'll actually answer your second part of the question on an example. We had our actuarial team come to us with something that they needed to solve. And it was basically our global framework and how we would automate a process for modeling. Right now they were using a lot of Excel spreadsheets to do a lot of work, and they needed something automated because we have quarter-end reporting, and for those who know financial standards, IFRS 17 is a big new way of doing accounting standards, and technology has to enable that. So what we had done is said the amount of man hours, the amount of processing time that it takes to actually use the storage, compute, and output. We put together a business case with them on what that would look like and how, if we invested in a certain build or buy, usually it's build for us internally, that we would be able to complement that and do that for them, and this is the value that it would bring to the organization. So for us, that's how we kind of approach the situation, and it's a relationship. Mm-hmm. And the sign-off has to be with, obviously, our CEO, because it's a pretty big thing, but we generally do that with all of our functions. So I support all functions internally, so whether it's HR, whether it's operations, whether it's marketing, whatnot, we take the framework of what is the overall value, prioritize that value, and then execute upon that.
Mm-hmm. And really, what kind of challenge, can you give us a specific example of something maybe you faced and how you were able to overcome that?
From a challenge perspective?
Yes. Correct.
Yeah, I think just awareness. I think awareness is a big component of it. So we're, again, the services across the organization. So every team is different. They're in their own journey. Some are more mature, some are not. So it's just really trying to understand where they are and how to help and support. Again, it's really not about automation. I think Julie maybe had mentioned earlier, it's not about a single team that's running automation. Automation is part of the organization. The framework and the methodology and how we do it can live within one team, but it's something that needs to be in the mindset. So it's really just awareness and bringing teams along the journey on what it is they're looking to do and how they're looking to achieve it, right? Because ultimately it's not just about automating a process, it's what is the impact to your customer, to your people, to whoever your audience is. So that's just really guiding that journey along.
Now, we talk about transformative change, easy to say, transformative change. What projects are you doing now, or something that you're really proud of, or something that really stands out from your company? And if you can describe exactly what that is. Marcus, we'll start with you.
Oh, wow. I think, so transformative change it can be difficult. Mm-hmm. I think for us, the first one that comes to mind is one of the issues we had in real estate is finding a good budgeting system. Real estate budgeting is actually quite complex, and there's no good tool out there, and it was an endless source of frustration for the organization. Mm-hmm. And it was all, the technology we were using was always getting the blame. The reality was there was process issues, there were some training issues with the people, and part of it was the technology. We couldn't find a good off-the-shelf solution, and so what we ended up doing was buying a low-code platform and building something ourselves, working with the business. It was a large collaborative effort with multiple departments to build essentially a made-in-choice budgeting system. I undertook the project with a lot of trepidation because we aren't a development shop. It isn't really part of our strategy, but this really was, we thought, the best solution. We sold it to the business, and it's been extremely successful. We've run with it for a couple of years. It's addressed many of the issues. The leasing people like it, the operations people like it. It works for accounting, and it really has transformed our whole budgeting process, and was a good, and also did a lot to build up that trust with the business, to show that you can use technology in a way to do something that's different and special.
Yeah, these are the stories I like to hear. These are great stories. Mamta, if you can explain something, maybe a project that you're working that really, really stood out to you.
I'll give one large example and then one small that we're working on. Well, it's not that small, but we, over the past 3 years, we've actually been on a cloud migration journey. So we've moved over 62 to 3% of our applications onto our cloud platform, which is Microsoft Azure. It's not a secret, it's all public information. And for us to actually have done that organizationally worldwide, it was a huge, huge, huge challenge. And it wasn't just, because for me, it's all internal applications, but we also have a lot of customer-facing applications. So we'd have to work with our segment CIOs in making that happen. And in markets like Asia, for example, for those who have worked in Asia, it's not very easy. You have different regulations, different governments, different requirements. And so for us to actually have done that was a huge, huge, huge feat that really, and to bring people along that journey was to show them the benefits of what would be the outcome as a result of moving onto cloud. That yes, it's going to be really like pulling teeth for us to do all of this, and we are comfortable with mainframe and on-prem solutions, but we really have to think about what we can do now and what the output can be as a result, and showing them that business case. And that was a lot of work, and we've been pretty successful, knock on wood, with that. In a second now that we're delving into, and I think a lot of us here is looking at working with Microsoft on Copilot. So that's something we've started to pilot internally, and that is a big, huge transformational change. So we've just started the journey, so I can't really say I'm proud of it yet, but it is something that we are working on, and that of course will be transformative.
And for Rohit, for you?
Yeah, so I think for us, like I mentioned, we're still trying to tackle the low-hanging fruit, providing the value. But I think what I'm probably most proud of right now is the fact that we're trying to implement the mindset into the DNA of what we do and how we do it. We have communities of practice, so we don't want this to be an IT thing, right? This is a cross-functional thing. So creating a community of practice where every week we sit and we discuss, we talk about the opportunities, and just really creating that mindset, a design thinking approach in terms of how to solve problems is something that we're very interested in, to make it user-centric. So don't, and I'd say I'm looking ahead at the question.
We do.
But it's also just about making sure that you're not automating for the sake of automating. Why are you automating? What is the outcome that you're going to get? And I think I'm really happy with the way we're approaching that, because it's a journey. It's not going to happen overnight, but we need to really put that in the mindset of all of us in terms of why we want to do things and how we're going to do it.
Yes, and I'm glad you touched upon it, because it's a two-part question. The first part we've kind of hit upon, but it's also this question of any insight into new mistakes made with the implementation of automation. Have you seen any of that, Marcus? New mistakes being made because of automation?
Yeah, I think new mistakes made with the implementation. Yeah, I think the advice I would give is don't be afraid to start small. I think the mistake, there's a potential for a mistake to go too quickly, too big, too fast, and this is new technology. I think it's going to take time to build up trust in it, to perfect it. It's also going to take time to find out what are the real use cases for this. I think, and especially for a business like ours, where the IT function within the business is much smaller. There isn't necessarily a lot of technology put out there to deal with a lot of customers, let's say a big customer base or a big user base. So, just talking about our journey and looking back 4 years when we started, we couldn't figure it out at the start. And so we made a strategic decision to start small. We brought in a tool. We didn't spend a lot of money. and we started experimenting with the business to see like what really is the use case, where can we add the most value. And it was good because in the end, as we went through our journey, we found out where we thought the opportunity was going to be is not in fact where we could deliver the most value. And so our strategy evolved over time. And so to take an incremental approach, I think ended up serving us well.
Excellent. Mamta, what do you think about new mistakes being made?
I think there will be a lot of new mistakes that are going to be made with, especially now with how OpenAI is going to be playing such a strong role in automation. I think what is really vital and to success of not making those mistakes is having the right guardrails and governance that's put in place. And that's something that, as an insurance company, we are really regulated, like to a point that I cannot even explain. So we are risk averse to the T. So the amount that we invest in making sure that we have the right guardrails in place to not make those mistakes, especially with OpenAI and having the right infrastructure there, that I think is what's going to help. But in general, when you're looking at automation, just being able to, work in an agile mindset, understanding like if you've made this mistake, how do we pivot and kind of correct that and have the right people at the table and not be punitive as a result of making those mistakes with automation. I think that's really the key because otherwise, in this day and age, you can't really be successful otherwise. So.
Yeah, I think for me, like it's less about failing fast, but learning fast.
Yeah.
So I actually encourage some of the mistakes sometimes because you actually learn, and I think that as long as you're methodical in how you approach it, and to your point, small low-hanging fruit, make it small, make the impact less, but learn. I think that's really important. So I actually kind of encourage the mistake part of it.
I love that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about cost effectiveness. It's an investment. It's an investment for a lot of these companies, and for those who are on the fence about automation. How did you make it most cost effective for your companies? I want to go through that. Was it, through partnerships? What were some of the things that you did to get the most bang for your buck? Marcus, we'll start with you.
I think, we did a couple of things. As I said earlier, we consciously made a small investment. So we brought in tools that weren't too expensive, and we had a number of options, anywhere from less than $50,000 to more than $300,000. So we picked the cheaper one because that was our comfort level. The other thing we've done is, we have, as I mentioned before, for our budgeting, we brought in a low-code tool, and we did it with our in-house skill set. But the other thing we've done that I think is a little bit unique is we formed let's say, business relationship with a small startup that had a really good idea to solve a specific issue that real estate companies deal with, and in particular Canadian real estate companies, where they have to charge back CAM and operating costs and realty taxes to tenants. There's a very complicated process to do those calculations and allocate the cost back. They came up with a tool that was a really good calculation engine, but wasn't enterprise ready, couldn't integrate. And we had a vision for how you would do that. And so we ended up doing a deal with them. We helped them with the development. We got a good deal on the licensing. And we went through a collaboration for the last 2 years. And in fact, just this week, we did the final integration. And again, we think we have an excellent tool. We're one of the first companies in Canada to have this tool. The accountants love it. We're going to get a ton of efficiency out of it. And that, I think that's a big win for us. So really to sum up, we've had a variety of strategies that we've used depending on the situation.
Got it. And Rohit, what's worked for your company, for Metrolinx?
So I think, we've been a little bit on a transformation journey for the last 2.5 years. I think, primarily, being part of the Caren Corporation, I think, before I joined, we were very much reliant on, external help to really tell us and walk us through how we need to do things. So, and we've really brought that talent in-house. So I think from a people perspective, we've done a lot of great work to bring that in-house, what our former CIO called it, the brains in, arms, legs out, meaning we have the knowledge in-house and we control our own destiny. So we're really bringing that talent in. And some of the use cases, just to further to your point, some of the use cases that we're building off on, like, now that we've sort of provided the value, we're starting to see use cases coming up that are actually really important to just what people's experiences are on ridership and transportation, and really from a safety perspective, really tackling those types of use cases because those are important. The other thing is QA automation, and we keep talking about the RPA component of it, but there's also the QA automation of it, which I think is very important because every project that we do now it's a guideline. Before you can say you're done, you need 80% QA automation in all the scripts that you're running. So regression testing, those types of things are part and parcel for what we do, and the opportunity and the savings that we're seeing from that alone are significant.
Excellent. And Mamta, how do you make it the most cost efficient for your company?
I think, again, at the end of the day, we have to show what the value it's going to bring to our business. For us, we're a cost center. Technology is a cost center. So what the business needs is to be a digital customer leader. That's what our CEO has publicly said. That's where we want to be. So that means internally we have to make sure we're making the right investments to make that happen in the most cost-effective way, which is not always easy, but we have to show how we're using automation to make that happen. So that's, taking, believe it or not, we had fax machines, taking those out. This is like a year ago. And things like, how can we look at our processes internally? How do we automate those to support our front office users to make things easier for them? So at the end of the day, for us, it's just really showing how we will use certain processes and automate internally to bring value and, by testing and automating testing and all those other things for our end users. So. And I wanted to be mindful of time. So
She's looking at the clock here. Good. Thank you very much, you guys, especially for sharing those personal experiences within your company that you've done. So thank you. Hang tight right here. I'm just going to introduce our next guest. I want to bring back to the stage Chandra. She's going to be having a conversation with Jaime Tatis of Telus. Thank you.
And to everyone here. Jaime Tatis is the Chief Insights Officer at Telus, one of Canada's largest conglomerates, as everyone is mostly aware of. Telus relies heavily on using advanced technology, including AI and artificial intelligence, to run its operations to ensure an optimal customer experience. Today we're going to talk about a lot of interesting things, especially what Telus is doing, which I was quite fascinated to hear about the examples you mentioned when we were having our conversation last. So I'm going to get right into it. We've got about 20 minutes, and then I believe the bar opens, if I'm not mistaken. So we'll make sure this is worth your while. So Jaime, I want to sort of first take a quick step back and talk about the current environment. These are uncertain times, both in terms of macroeconomic pressures, technology uncertainties and things like that. In fact, Telus for 2023 has lowered its outlook primarily because of this. It's impacting Telus International, which is the enterprise IT services business. The company has also said that and announced that it is adopting generative AI to automate operations and drive costs down. Can you talk to us a little bit more about that?
Sure. So in Telus, we've been doing AI for many years, so it's nothing new to us. We've been doing it since 2017, 18. It's been a while. Now the latest trend, of course, is Gen AI, as everybody talked briefly before us about all the things that their companies are doing with this technology. We always have leveraged technology, regardless what's called big data, AI, Gen AI. It's a new generation or a new flavor of it, to be able to provide better customer experiences and ensure that we can bring efficiency on the way that we actually provide products, services, so on and so forth. The technology always has been an enablement for our main mission, that is always to excel on how we actually provide services to our customers. When you're looking at the macroeconomic conditions, one of the things that I even will step out of just Telus, but when you look at as the Canadian context, right? One of the things that is a good opportunity for us to leverage is how can we use this technology to increase our productivity. One of the main lagging indicators that we have as a country right now is our productivity gap in the OECD and many other leading countries. So technology actually offers us a good leverage, a good lever to be able to actually fast track and narrow this GDP gap and this productivity gap that we have versus other countries. So how we leverage technology, not only for Telus, but everyone here representing your own companies, is going to be critical for us to define how we're going to progress economically as a country.
Okay. I want to talk about some examples, and specifically this one when we were last having a conversation that I found absolutely fascinating. So Telus, and correct me if I'm wrong, so Telus is basically using technology to have, to allow rather its staff of specific departments to interact with large documents, to have debates with them, to sort of have conversations with these large files to pull out and extract data in like the snap of a finger. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, so one of the interesting things that happened, I'll tell you a little bit of history, is, you know, everybody was looking at the news in November last year. OpenAI came to be 100 million subscribers or users in 2 months, was super, super quick. And, you know, we were very intrigued to see how could we leverage that technology in a way that was responsible, safe, secure. So many companies have 2 options. Either you don't do anything, that's not what we're going to do, or you provide a way that actually is safe and secure for your team members to access it and start to learn from it. So what we created early in the year was an architecture from our own team's internal IP that we created that actually allow our team members to ensure that all the information that they place in there, nothing is going to be logged for training the document, is secure, is private, there's no retention in it. But the interesting part is it gave us the ability to actually create a lot of features and functionalities really early on. So one of the things that we learned in that process was that a lot of people initially were using Gen AI for very basic things. So they will just, ask a question or try to say, create a document out of these 5 bullet points or summarize this and give me some bullet points on it. But one of the things that we started to train people many months ago is, well, there's so much more that you can do with that. You can have a debate with it. So we started to actually have videos, demos, you name it. Like we have 100,000 people. So we needed to have a strategy that actually we can get to every single person in our org to ensure that actually they have examples on how to use that. And the most interesting part is as soon as the people get into it, it's amazing to see what they can achieve on their own. So every week we get amazed by examples of teams from the company showing us what things have they been able to do on their own with it and transforming and changing their processes. There was a speaker here a few sessions ago, and actually she was saying something that is very true. Innovation doesn't come from a single team you put on the corner. Innovation is how do you equip everybody in your company to be an innovator in a way that is safe and secure to do it. So in that process, we actually created a function that now is more common, but at the time was more uncommon, that you could upload a document, you could embed it, and actually ask questions on it. And that was extremely handy. If you imagine a regulatory file, a big contract, you actually could get all that information and ask questions about it, have a debate with it, compare things. And that was just of 2 examples of many other functions that we've been able to do.
Okay, and I know you mentioned that every week you guys would be fascinated to see what comes out of it. Can you give us some examples about what came out of that?
Sure, there's many. So for example, one of the quick examples we have is we had a team 2 months ago or so that actually came to us and said, hey, we actually been using the tools that you provided, and we created a solution that actually allows technicians on the field to access through applications, using voice as well, a lot of the information and curated repository that we have in place on how to do things. So they actually had an assistant on their phone that they could either text or they could talk to that actually will give them answers on how to solve certain things. The cool thing about that is we never put a team of 7 software developers and 5 machine learning engineers to do that with the team. They literally leverage the systems and tools that we put in place, and they do it on their own. So the way that we went to ensure that we got the best out of the Gen AI or AI in the companies, we have a two-pronged approach. One was, how do we provide tooling and processes that everyone in the company can use to innovate in their own domains? And the second one is, we know that there will be more complex use cases that we will need to have software developers, integration of systems, machine learning engineers to be able to work it out. And then business, we have a process where business units can actually put forward well-vetted business ideas tied to tangible financial outcomes that we will provide a squad of specialized people to work on that use case and actually create value for their teams.
Okay. You mentioned individuals taking it on themselves and playing around. There's an audience question here that relates just to that.
Yeah.
What skills in education are most important to acquire for the operations team to keep up with AI?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I will split AI on two. So one of the things that we learned on the past is most of the solutions of AI, you needed to code. You needed to be a machine learning engineer. You needed to go into Python, know which libraries to use, all those different things. The cool thing now for Gen AI is actually open the possibility that you don't have to be a coder to experience the power of AI. For many of the use cases, you have to be a very good prompter or a very good, manage really good linguistics to be able to prompt it in a way to specify exactly what you need. So for me, as always, with any technology, the main thing that we really need is the curiosity from the team members and the room for them to innovate and try new things. And for them to be effective on that, they need to have common tooling and processes that actually allows a huge organization to have all their team members being able to innovate.
And how much does creativity play a role in this?
Tons, massively. For example, that example that I portrayed about this team that actually came with their own on that solution on how they were going to create this assistance for technicians on the field, they came themselves in it. And the reality is, neither myself or any other executive in the company is going to be able to know as much as the business of every single one in the company as they know the business themselves. That's the reason that, again, close to the person that was speaking before, is innovation doesn't come from a little bubble or a room in the corner. Innovation is everyone on the company having the right culture, mentality to be able to achieve a future that is not the one they have today.
Okay. You speak to executives of some of the largest corporations in Canada about AI. You guys, share ideas. Could you give us a little bit of an insight about what those conversations are and what those takeaways are?
Yeah, so many of the conversations that we have with many
and if you could share which companies there.
I won't go too far on that, but with very like-minded companies, we share learnings on the bleeding edge. So, for example, we will talk about how are you controlling your use cases so they don't provide fake answers. And all those conversations actually allow us to fast track and gain domain, not only on the knowledge, but actually what works, what doesn't work, so we can move faster. One of the things, as I mentioned before, is I personally have a very focus on how we actually use this technology to really increase the productivity for our country. If we actually can use this technology to narrow that gap, it's going to transcend through generations, and that's what we really need to do. So the reason that we share these things and we are actually, share knowledge, best practices, is just to be able to advance Canada as a country ahead.
Okay. I want to go back to, I know we're taking a step back rather, to, you mentioning individuals taking AI forward. There's another audience question related to that. How do you effectively govern citizen-developed AI projects to ensure it's not used in ways that are inconsistent with the company's principles?
That's a really good question. So we have a very strong privacy and data governance program in the company. We have different certifications in Telus that we have gained globally tied to that. So anytime that any team actually needs to do something with data, I'm going to go, because it was an example about AI, you need some data. So there's a process that we call the data enablement program that actually the team members needs to go through that very efficient process to ensure that we have the right consent, the right to use the data for the use cases that we want to use it. We have logs. There's approval that is really quick, so it's not something that's going to take you 4 months, depending on the use cases. Some of them are, yeah, sure, you can do it. Some of them are more complex, and there's more debate that is going to happen on that. But we have a very robust process to do that. Now, the main thing that I will advise is have very strong processes, but be sure that they don't stifle innovation in your company. So if for every idea you're going to wait 7 months to know you can do it, people is not going to follow that. So you have to balance quite heavily how much automation and how agile you have those processes so they actually don't have the adverse effect of a slow down the innovation you want to accomplish in your company.
Okay, and that's a tricky sort of balance to maintain, right?
And that's the same balance as with regulation. Mm-hmm. Regulation always try to balance how they don't stifle innovation while actually have a good control on whatever area they regulate on.
Yeah. I'm glad you mentioned regulation. This was something that I wanted to talk about for sure. How concerned are you about regulation? Or are you concerned at all?
Well, we need regulation because we need to ensure that we build trust in every single Canadian that actually we have an oversight on this, that we're doing this the right way.
Yeah.
So we are very big proponents to actually have open conversations on how that policy or regulation should look like. Because to my earlier point, right, like we need to ensure that they are rules and guardrails in place to guide how companies are doing this in a safe and robust environment, but ensuring that actually we don't stifle innovation, and actually we marry those two so we can do safe and purposefully focused innovation to drive forward the different companies and projects that we want to do, economy, so on and so forth, without running the risk of, well, you cannot use it, you cannot do anything with it. It's really what we don't want to do either.
And do you think Canada is doing a good job with that, like regulating it?
We're having consultations, we're talking. So I find all over the world right now, everybody's having the same conversations. There were some panelists before us that was talking about the regulation in the US. Everybody's having the same conversations. Different entities are participating in forums, conversations, just to try to find out what do they do. One of the challenges as well is whatever you specify too much now is going to be obsolete in 24 months.
Yes.
So there's always a big challenge on how fast technology is moving right now, that you will have something that still will be valid by the time you print it on the paper.
And how does a company like Telus move that fast to keep up with all of these?
Well, first of all, we are members of different associations and think tanks that actually are working in different environments that these conversations are actively happening. We always have been ahead of regulation when it comes to privacy, security. We're always ahead on that domain. We believe that not having this in your culture, in your core norms, is not how is outside of our culture. Like we have security by design, reliability by design, security by design. For us, is not a second thought. This will always be one of the first things we're going to think about. So as I mentioned before, we welcome it. We welcome it, but we need to be very mindful on how we portray it and execute it.
Mm-hmm. Talk to me about some of the other challenges you're seeing within the company, within departments, and implementation of advanced technologies.
Well, I find that with any technology, the technology itself is never the problem. It's how you execute it, and it's always people and processes. So I always like example of when the electric engine came to be. So before the electric engine, they have steam engines. So you went to a factory floor, you will have the steam engine, and then you will have all these systems with pulleys and arrays that were very much dictated by the steam engine. So the first thing that happened is they replaced the steam engine and plugged an electric engine in it. But they left everything else the same. Then eventually, after many years, somebody thought, well, maybe if we actually reorganize the whole entire factory, it can be more efficient because cannot follow the pulley system or whatever system that they were using, the line shaft, but actually we're going to be using, you know, how the materials flow in a better way now that we can power each little station on their own. And that took many years until it really happened. So when it comes to AI or any technology, we're in that process. I find we're in phase one. The phase one is we are replacing, displacing different activities or actions in the current process that exists today. The next stage is how are we going to rethink completely how can we change the process now that that technology is there. And the most interesting part is phase three. Phase three, we don't know how that's going to look like. But phase three is when you integrate different technologies into one. So when you think about AI, Gen AI, robotics, 5G, IoT, I don't know how that's going to look like, but it's going to be fascinating to see.
Okay. And what would you like to see Telus do when it comes to AI that, you know, the company isn't doing now and perhaps even, you know, one of your competitors or peers are doing instead?
Well, when I think about AI, and it's not only about Telus, but I will say in general, there's so much we can do in so many domains. So in Telus, we have the telco domain, but also we have Telus Health, Telus Agriculture. Again, I'm not a health professional, but when I look at the power of data and AI that can have on health is tremendous. So I find that there's a lot of more work to be done there. And I'm fascinated to see how we actually could leverage fully that technology to ensure that we can help Canadians live more healthy lives and be able to prevent disease and bad health outcomes with the power of this technology.
Okay. We have 1 minute left before this is done. So very quickly, I'm going to squeeze in one quick question. You've been in the company for 15 years almost, approximately. Yeah. What are you most excited about now going forward? Like in terms of, you know, where technology is going and how the company is being transformed?
I'm really excited on how the next transformation is going to look like. So I'm very excited on how we're going to actually rethink on how we do many things, not only in our company, as a society, how we're going to use this technology to narrow the education gap, how are we going to use this technology to have better agricultural outcomes. Like when you look at most pressing humankind issues right now is climate, food, health. So anything that we can do on that, I really want to see how that's going to pan out into solutions that actually are going to ensure that us as a humanity move forward and actually change and improve the quality of our lives.
And in one sentence, one final last sentence.
Yes.
What keeps you up at night when it comes to technology?
Too many things. But I always say what it keeps me up at night is the things that I willingly don't have enough time to tackle, that I know I have to put besides, you know, to ensure that I tackle at another time. And there's many on that list.
Okay, fair enough. That's all the time we have today, unfortunately, but this was,
thank you.
I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much, Jaime.
Take care.
Jaime Telus.
Okay. Well, that concludes everything for today. Thank you for joining us for Intelligent Automation, Transformation in a Time of Uncertainty. I hope you enjoyed all of our speakers, our moderators. Thank you so much for that. And I hope you enjoyed the conversations and you're able to take some nuggets back to your own companies and be able to have your own conversations. That's what this is all about, right? Big thank you to our sponsor, IBM, because it wouldn't be made possible without them for having all these talks that we did here for today. If you'd like some more information about our sponsor, visit the resources tab over on our event website. And also, thank you to you, to this audience for sending in in your questions. It makes my job easier. And for being such an active part of this, because that makes it just a little bit more interactive. And we always enjoy that. If you would like to see any part of this, you can go ahead back to Bloomberg Live and you can view it on demand. So in case you missed anything and you said, oh, what was that they said? You can go back and you can watch it again. So we have that helpful tip for you right there. That is it. We're on to, who's up for some cocktails and networking? Yes, that's what we're on to. And I just want to thank you everyone for that. And here's to a great program. Thank you.